Having damage is great. There are few things in Path of Exile which are more satisfying than just watching a boss get chunked, or better yet, watching that boss die in seconds. On the other hand though, very often, in the pursuit of damage, players stack so much of it that they have no defenses, and dying kind of sucks. So what if you could stack defenses in a way that increases your damage while making it highly unlikely that you'll die? These are some of the mechanical synergies that I'm going to get into today, along with a topic that I'm going to be touching on in a future video going into even more of these synergies. When I say synergy, you can think of this as the whole being greater than the sum of the parts, where you can use multiple skills, items, or supports together in such a way where the final value is far better than using any of them individually. For example, Shield Crush as a skill scales a lot of its base damage off of your shield's armor, evasion, or in some cases energy shield, at least if you're going for a crit build. This means that you want to be wearing a shield to use it. I mean, that's probably pretty obvious as it's kind of in the name. No one called it Unarmed Crush after all. But this also means that you're going to be using a shield, a fairly defensive item, which, in theory, should limit your ability to do damage. Well, to make up for some of that, Shield Crush actually has a lot better base damage than what you'd get with most weapons and most other skills in the game. However, Chris Wilson hasn't fulfilled my class fantasy of being a dual-wield shield build yet, so I can't really go around taking all the dual-wield shield nodes and crushing my enemies to death. I'm only limited to one single puny shield, and despite me picking the biggest shield I could find, it's still not that big, and no, that shield is definitely not overcompensating for anything, just like how Strife's sword isn't overcompensating for anything at all. Jokes of the expensive fictional characters aside, however, this does beg an interesting question. How do you get proper damage on Shield Crush? What if I told you the answer is, you do it through defenses. Defenses are more important than they've ever been in Path of Exile's history. As of 3.16, we actually have proper tools to scale defenses. For example, the Determination Aura helps to mitigate physical damage by giving you large amounts of armor. As a baseline, armor is very effective against small hits, but far less effective against large hits. This is because armor's effectiveness scales inversely to the size of a hit. If you get hit for 100,000 damage, your armor will be absolutely blown away. This is also why most physical builds, including things like the Shield Crush Trickster, do full damage to heavily armored unique enemies and bosses, effectively ignoring their armor by just hitting harder. Of course, if you want to mitigate even more damage with your armor, you could use something like Molten Shell. And of course, if we're using Determination and Molten Shell, we might as well throw in Grace. Grace gives you evasion. Evasion by itself isn't actually all that good. It helps you avoid attacks, but won't do anything against spells. Luckily, we're a trickster, so we have spells covered via spell suppression, and Grace giving evasion is very helpful for Ghost Dance, which is a powerful ES recovery mechanic. Of course, being a trickster, we're going to have some armor, we're going to have some evasion, we're going to have some energy shield. But none of this gives us damage. Or does it? If you want to know how this gives us damage, then stick around for just a couple minutes. Before I get into that though, a quick reminder that if you're finding this video helpful, maybe you've learned something about stacking defensive layers in Path of Exile, leave a like. And if you want to know more about similar mechanical synergies, get subscribed, as I'm going to be talking about a few more in an upcoming video. On the other hand, if you want to know how Sony is going to war with Microsoft, then stay tuned as I'm going to be covering that on my second channel. Links in the card right now and the description below. Before I get back to the video, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. More about how you can support at the end. For now, how do you turn all these defenses into damage? A unique item which, for a long time, was really bad. And that unique item is Perseverance. Much like its namesake, this item certainly has persevered. For a long time it was bad, because armor was bad, and evasion was bad. There's really no point in stacking most defensive stats in Path of Exile. But as of 3.16, defenses actually matter, and Perseverance gives you attack damage per the lowest of armor and evasion. Well, as I mentioned earlier, since we're a trickster, and we're wearing both Determination and Grace, we're going to have a lot of armor and a lot of evasion. The armor will empower Molten Shell and help to mitigate physical damage. The Grace will prevent us from taking too many hits, thus making the recovery from our Ghost Dance far more effective, while also giving us the evasion rating to make that Ghost Dance even better. We're also a melee build, and Fortify is pretty good on a melee build. Onslaught's also good. attacking and moving faster is generally a good time. So Perseverance adds that extra bit of damage as well. It's always great when you can scale your damage via scaling your defenses, especially in the case of something like Perseverance, which gives an absolutely massive amount of damage scaling. How much? Well, let's just say I get to 50,000 armor and 50,000 evasion rating. That will mean, at 1% damage per 200, that I'm getting 250% increased damage. That is well over 10 levels of passives, just from one belt. It might not quite be a Headhunter or Mageblood, but it's also about 1,000 times cheaper than a Headhunter or Mageblood, even if you get a somewhat expensive, well-rolled one. And so the end result of all this is a super tanky, high DPS build that feels great to play. But this isn't the only way to scale your damage by scaling your defenses. In fact, there's another setup that I'm going to get into in another video, where I talk about a different synergistic setup involving Crown of Eyes, Cerberus's Limb, and Emperor's Vigilance. Of course, not everyone's playing a Shield Crush Trickster, and while 250% increased damage on a build like Shield Crush that struggles to get increased damage from a tree is absolutely absurd, it doesn't mean it can't be applied to other things. Omni builds also struggle. You might have to get a Perseverance that's corrupted for attributes, but this could definitely be a way to add a massive amount of damage to a build that already has a lot of damage potential. Or maybe you're playing things like Lightning Strike, Spectral Helix, or Venom Gyre. All of these attacks are very easily able to run both Grace and Determination, and really that's all you need to properly enable Perseverance these days. Of course, not every build in Path of Exile is an attack build. Not every build can run both Grace and Determination, even though quite a lot of them do. And so now, today's question for you isn't so much a question as it is a little bit of a challenge. I want to challenge you to learn a little bit more about Path of Exile. So, I want you to comment down below an example of another mechanical synergy where you combine multiple defensive things with a unique item, skill, aura, or really anything else to significantly boost your damage. And whoever finds the best idea, their comment will get pinned down below. Good luck, and I'm very curious to see your thoughts. And even if you don't end up finding anything, I do hope at least you learned something about how you can scale both your defenses and damage on an attack build. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. Your support helps keep me independent and allows me to turn down things like sketchy mobile game sponsorships. You can do so for as low as $1 a month over on Patreon, or if you want to support me completely for free, then you can join the community by hopping into my Discord, link below. If you want more content, check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts. It's a place that I use to review games, ramble my way through video essays, and a lot more. Or of course, you can just click the suggested video in the card right now. I hope you learned something today, and maybe I'll see you again sometime soon.